We are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Lunch with Lunsford, which is the A.R.T's weekly webinar series hosted by our fabulous artistic producer, Mark Lunsford, the eponymous Lunsford. So this week, we are so happy to be joined by our special guests, Whitney White, Taibi Magar, and Tyler Dobrowsky. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. We're so happy to have you. So we're gonna have a few moments of, I can speak. We're gonna have a few moments of chatter just to give a few minutes for folks to join us who weren't able to tune in directly at 12. And in about 2 minutes, Mark is gonna start joining us in the conversation. So welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining.
The miracle of Zoom, like what you wouldn't know is that I think Sarah and Taibi and Tyler are literally like blocks from one another in Providence, Rhode Island, aren't you?
Yep. But they come out in the quarantine. Yeah, at least the weather here is better than it was yesterday. And I hope the same can be said for you and all of our wonderful guests who are joining.
And Whitney and I are actually quarantined together. So she's in the other room.
Wow, that could mean if you get a little feedback, everyone, that's what's going on.
You're in Chicago.
I would want to join.
That's a dream quarantine house.
Spoon feeds me white wine when I'm at
That's a real friendship, you know? So for those of you who have tuned in the past minute, thank you so much for joining us again. We are so happy to have our fabulous special guests. We're just going to give another minute or so for stragglers to come in, and then Mark's going to start directing the conversation, and I will disappear from your screens, sadly.
So Whitney, you're in Chicago, yeah?
I am in Chi-Town, yes, on the north side. I'm staying near Steppenwolf Theater right now.
I got it. So
Yeah.
it's like 11. It's like brunch with Lunsford for you.
Oh,
Brunch for me.
I like that. That could be our sequel series, Brunch with Lunsford.
Yeah. I mean, I'll drink a Bloody Mary just to make you feel like.
I'm so low on my Bloody Mary mix. I've got like that much. It's like every time I have one, I'm like, last one.
Wonderful. All right, my friends, it looks like we've got a pretty good quorum of attendees. So at this point, I'm gonna turn the reins over to Mark and disappear. Thank you again for joining, and thanks everyone tuning in at home for another episode of Lunch with Lunsford. I'll see you later.
Bye. This is where I really wish we had a theme song, right? Like we had a little like jingle to bring us in right now. It would be so appropriate. This is the third week in a row I've requested a jingle. I think the Lazars are watching, so I think it's probably their job to figure that out. Welcome everyone. It's so exciting to have you here.
Mark.
What's up, Mark?
Hey. It's exciting yet a somber moment, right? Because before all this sort of COVID response, we would have been going into tech this week, I think.
Oh my God. Literally tomorrow.
For those of you who don't know what we're referencing, I'm talking, of course, about Macbeth in Stride, the sort of world premiere piece that we were going to be starting at Oberon in technical rehearsals this week. Whitney is the creator and star, and Taibi and Tyler are co-directors of that piece. And it's really fun because we actually have, the four of us have so many other connections prior to this piece, which is really, I think always makes working on a new piece fun when you know all the folks before and you're not trying to like establish those new relationships, right? So, you know, Whitney, we've presented a piece that you directed. Taibi, you know, of course, as director of We Live in Cairo. But actually, I knew Tyler first in this mix. Tyler, who's the associate artistic director at Trinity Rep. And Tyler and I actually met, I think, first through our really good friend Shira Milikowski.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And then we would end up in all the same breakout sessions at the TCG conference every summer. And so we're like, hey, yeah, we know each other, you know, through our good friend Shira. So I'm very excited to be getting to work on an artistic endeavor with Tyler.
Yeah, same. Mark, I always knew you as that cool guy at the conference. I was like, who's that guy? He's got cool tattoos. I was like, who's that guy? What's his deal all about? So very happy we get to collaborate.
That's very nice of you. I mean, I think we all know that Darren J. Miles is the mayor of TCG, but I do appreciate that compliment, Tyler. So I kind of wanted to start actually because the three of you know each other from Providence and know each other from Brown and perhaps before, but I wondered if like the three of you might even just want to start with the origin story. Like what is the Whitney, Tyler, Taibi origin story in Providence, Rhode Island? Like take us back there.
Whoa. Okay. I'm going to start. All right. So I went and applied. I was an actress. I was a musical theater actress. I was very lost. I was the token Black girl in every musical you could imagine. And when I hit the bottom of the barrel with that, I was like, I think I want to learn more about theater. And I applied to Brown University and got in, and Taibi was a year above me, and I was in the acting program. Taibi was a director, and Tyler just makes everything run. So like in the 3 years that I was there, I was incredibly inspired by the both of them, both their work as directors at Trinity Rep on the main stage, and then also just like Tyler's work in community organizing. Tyler gave me a job I'll never forget at Yazi, the Trinity Rep summer arts program that like filled my heart with so much love, and seeing him organize all these students and all these events was like so inspiring. And then Taibi is of course like one of the greatest directors we have right now. So I started writing this little piece for an assignment that we have at Trinity Rep called the Solo Thesis Project. Everybody when they're graduating from the acting program has to come up with 30 minutes of material. And I was like, what am I gonna do, y'all? And I made a concentric circle between my three favorite things, which were like strong female characters, rock and roll, and Tina Turner, and started working on this piece. And I had no idea we were going to work together, but I just admired them very much when I was a student at Trinity Rep, and they were very kind to me and very supportive of the weird things I was trying to do.
Yeah, I remember Whitney, the actors get accepted and then they come for a visit, and Whitney couldn't come with the rest of her actors. She came by herself, and I remember she like walked down our lunch table and was like, should I go here? And I was like, yes. And then that's the beginning of a many-year collaboration. I mean, Whitney's been working on Macbeth and Stride for like a long time, and Tyler and I came on board like a year or 2 years ago or something just to help take it just a little bit further. But we've been in love with Whitney for years and years and years, and she's just like, it just is shocking how good she is at literally everything: the writing, the performing, the composition, the directing. Or just like a knockout.
Yeah.
And fun fact about Whitney, she was my first assistant director on We Live in Cairo workshop.
Yes.
At New York Theater Workshop. And then by the time the show came around, she was way too famous to actually take it out. But she has some Cairo origins.
Yeah, I worked on Cairo at New York Theater Workshop. That workshop, it was so fun. And every day I would like, Taibi would be sitting here and she would be talking to people, and I would just be like, I love you so much every day.
That's amazing. That's actually another like central figure, and it's hilarious because I think he just hit the chat, but I was building up to this anyways. Like the role that Aaron Malkin has played in all of us connecting as well. Because I definitely remember Aaron was the first one who was like, Mark, you have to meet Whitney White. It's like so important. You guys would really hit it off. She's got this great piece. I was like, okay, that sounds really exciting. Sure, like we'll have a meeting, we'll have a beer. What's going on? And Taibi, you were in town for something. You were in Cambridge for something to do with Cairo. I don't know if we were like doing a developmental session or what. And we were at Grafton Street afterwards. It was like you and the Lazors and Diane Border and I. And we were just chatting about other things. And I was like, oh, I'm actually going to New York tomorrow, and I'm meeting this like really cool artist named Whitney White that Aaron said that we should connect with. And you were like, she's my best friend. And I was like, oh, great. She has this piece called Macbeth In Stride that I think we might want to do it over on. And you were like, Tyler and I are directing that. And I had no idea. I was totally oblivious to this connection.
Well, it's been kind of a miracle, Aaron, he shout out to Aaron. He is so supportive and like one of those people in New York like you, Mark, who's like been so life-changing for me because you have let me work with you in many ways, in the multi ways I want to work. And not everybody is as generous and open to that. So I'm very grateful to both you and him for being able to like, to you actually listen to me when I'm like, I'm going to write this thing, but now I'm going to direct this thing. And it's really great that there's people like you in the industry who are accepting that people do more than one thing sometimes, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Well, that actually is kind of like a perfect segue into the next thing I want to talk about, which was, you know, the three of you. I kind of, maybe it's weird to say, but I think of you as this like artistic collective. You know,
What's the name, Tyler? What's up?
The House of Providence or something. I don't know.
Oh my God, spelled like Haus, like German, like the House of Providence.
Yes.
Tyler's kind of our house leader, so it's up to him.
We'll come up with a name. We'll come up with something. I like that idea, though. The collective is good. That's good.
Yeah, but I think, you know, we say this like about your sort of roles in the theater, and I think we get so absorbed into like people are actors or people are directors or people are these things, right? But I feel like the way the three of you collaborate, you definitely take some of that territory, but it's just such an open conversation between the three of you at all times. And I wonder if you can talk about sort of the nature of how you share artistically and where you see sort of each of you factoring into this this collaboration, because you're all directors, but you extend so much further than that as theater practitioners and artists. So I wonder if you can talk a little bit about your artistic process amongst the three of you.
Maybe I'll just like start and say that I think on a foundational level, I just think there's a lot of just like respect and love for between the three of us, you know, both professionally and personally. I remember when Whitney was a student in the MFA program, it seemed like she could do everything. You know, she was an excellent performer, both like as a dramatic actor and musical theater. And then she also directed a couple of shows that like still live in my head. And then when she did Macbeth and Stride as her like thesis, it really felt like such a transcendent performance. I remember being there watching it. I met her mom at the time. Like it was like such an event, you know, watching that. And between Whitney's prowess and then Taibi, who I have married, who I clearly love, you know what I mean? It feels like such a really nice professional and personal relationship that's kind of built over the past couple of
Look at this photo of these two beautiful people. I mean, like, that is like Vanity Fair, like New York Times, like couple of the year realness. Like, look at the lashes. Look at the lashes.
Okay, sorry, Tyler, I interrupted you.
No. I mostly just wanted to say that there's really like a lot of love and respect, and so when Whitney says something or Taibi says something or I say something, I think we all listen and really hear it, you know, when the other person speaks.
Yeah, and then being at Brown all together, you know, means we have an incredibly sophisticated shorthand with each other, like because we know and understand and use the same language and have the same reference points. So it's really feels like directing with Tyler and with Whitney's, where like the lines are blurred, so we're all together making it. It really feels like a day at the spa. Like there's just like it's so easy. And then what's so great about Whitney being just such an incredible performer, director, and like she you just have to say the tiniest thing, and she runs with it and then takes it and then amplifies it, and just like she can filter it through her writing brain, her music brain, her performer brain, and her director brain, and it's so easy to work and exciting and invigorating. And then I feel like she'll even like we'll push her and she'll push us, and we just all become so much better.
It's really like, and like they're being really nice saying that, oh, we share all this woo woo woo, but in reality, like Taibi and Tyler are just between the two of them, I feel like I have a dream, like my technical and artistic needs are just covered. So what I get to do is go sit in a room with a guitarist and piano. Shout out to Zdenko Martin and Peter Mark Kendall and Billy and everyone who's like been a collaborator with me on the project, but I get to go do my favorite thing, which is to sit in a room with a piano and a Shakespeare text and some music and just mash it all together. And then I bring Taibi and Tyler this script, and not only do they give me technical dramaturgical ideas, sometimes huge ones, because sometimes I'm corny and I have to be policed, okay? Fine. And then they help me bring it to life on stage in a really visceral way. And I think that, like echoing Taibi, because we have this lineage, the Brown Trinity lineage, House of Providence, if you will. You know, we have a particular way of approaching ensemble-based theater or devised kind of theater that feels devised or very in the moment, and also classical work. So I get to go sit in a room, and then they get to kind of be in charge of really what you see on stage. And it's really, really, really liberating to be able to rely on them in that way, because then I can just do what I really love doing, which is text and music and putting that together. And it's a crazy little experiment. It feels like every time we do it, I'm like, is this gonna work? Because, you know, we're really trying to make to kind of entrench ourselves within a style of concert-based theater. And it's like, can people receive Shakespeare and a contemporary Black female story and music in this way? And will it be fulfilling for them? And will they understand what I'm even after? So I think that's when you ask about our collaboration, I feel like every time we have a workshop or something, it feels so exciting, because I feel like I'm just experimenting, and that rarely ever happens. You know what I mean?
And let me just say, Whitney White experimenting is something everyone should witness. Tyler and I talk about it all the time. When she's in the rehearsal room, like she's generating and writing on the spot, and it's like
it's the best. Yeah, no, Whitney's she's amazing. Like, it's amazing to watch. Like,
I snuck them drugs in their quarantine.
Well, I definitely want to come back to like how that all plays into Oberon, and like sort of the match between like doing Macbeth and Stride and Oberon. But I also want to talk a little bit about some of the other work that has like connected you and A.R.T. And Whitney, I'm going to start with you because we're kind of in talking about your process. And I want to talk a lot about What to Send Up When It Goes Down, Alicia Harris's play that you directed. That was, you know, this like runaway hit off Broadway, went on this incredible tour to Woolly Mammoth, to A.R.T. It went to the public. It was part Under the Radar Festival. I think there's more life in store. And, you know, working with the movement company who sort of produced that piece, I guess first is like, if you can give us sort of like the brief overview for folks who haven't seen it, but it goes beyond being a play in so many ways.
Yeah. Okay. So Alicia Harris, this brilliant writer who actually, again, life is really funny. Taibi directed Is God Is, this spectacular, flawless production at Soho Rep of Alicia's. It changed my life. Reading that script changed my life. And
it was amazing.
Also connected Alicia and I for What to Send Up. That was years ago. It's crazy. But in short, Alicia Harris is a mastermind, one of our great, great, great playwrights. And she has written this piece, What to Send Up When It Goes Down, that is a pageant and celebration and honoring of Black men, women, and children whose lives have been lost to racialized violence. And what that looks like is a piece that every night the actors, the ensemble of 8,
I'm going to show some pictures while you talk.
Sure. They choose a name as a group consciously of a Black man, woman, or child who has been killed, who has been, you know, murdered under the guise of racialized violence, basically. And it could be something that happened last week. It could be Emmett Till. But every night we're honoring a different life. And the audience is asked to enter the space and make a circle with the performers. And we all go through a sort of facilitation that is meant to kind of debunk gaslighting and to kind of put us all on the same page about how anti-Blackness contributes to racialized violence. And then the next step is like through song and movement, a play erupts out of that. And the play is very much rooted in a kind of vaudevillian a vaudevillian, fast-moving theatrical landscape in which all the characters kind of jump into a blender, and they show you these kind of vignettes, these short snapshots of Black people dealing at first in a very funny way with anti-Blackness, and then it culminates into a tragedy at the end. And then the last part is kind of a benediction, I like to call it. Like in church, when the priest or pastor leaves you with a good word, the audience is separated. That's all I'll say in case you get a chance to see it. And each group is given a kind of benediction. And so the piece kind of works like a choreo poem. I feel like I hope it's okay that I use that word, but it does feel very kinetic. And we did a lot of choreography, and there's a lot of singing, and there's just a lot of like structure bending to kind of tell this piece. And it was wonderful being in Boston. And the community, I feel, received the work so beautifully. I mean, some of our best reviews came from there, and it was just a wonderful time bringing the piece there.
It's interesting, you know, I think a lot of the performers in that piece, because not only the work that has to be done every night, every performance, sort of bringing that to a new audience, but then also it doesn't necessarily benefit from the safety of sitting in one space for weeks and weeks at a time. You know, part of this tour was not only about touring to these cities, but then in DC, I mean, you played almost, what, 5 different venues?
Yeah.
You played 2 different venues. So that always felt like not only like the power that has to be summoned to do that every performance, but then to do it in a different space is even more, I think, you know, of a testament to those performers.
Yeah, and I'm thankful we had the opportunity, because it was always a goal to make sure that Black people could see it, because that's so often in the theater. You do a show in New York, you get a good review, and then all of a sudden nobody can come get in and nobody can get the tickets. And it was the play, Alicia very much, I feel, wrote the piece to be a balm and soothing thing for Black people, but it's made in such an open, generous, very generous, welcoming way that it's a balm for everyone, I feel. So she really did a beautiful job writing that piece.
Yeah. And Taibi, I wonder, you know, I want to dig in a little bit to We Live in Cairo as well. Daniel and Patrick were my inaugural guests on Lunch with Lunsford. And, you know, we talked a lot about sort of the process of making that piece, and kind of the marriage of crafting a theatrical narrative out of history, in particular living history. I mean, the Egyptian Revolution is something, as we've learned in the last year, that we're still living today. And I wonder, you know, I'm struck by, in particular, in We Live in Cairo, we spend a lot of time in the first act building up to the revolution in 2011, right? And we end the first act with the occupation of Tahrir Square and what the revolution looked like in those 18 days. But you only had 8 people on stage. And so I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about sort of visioning for that moment. How do you bring the audience into this huge protest occupation with 8 actors?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually it's not terribly unrelated actually to What to Send Up and to Macbeth and Stride, which I think is all related to our Brown experience, which is that I feel like what Whitney and I have in common, and that we were inspired by Brown, is a really visceral, evocative storytelling. And I knew that A.R.T couldn't afford 100 performers, or even if you could, that's not really the most interesting way to tell the story of the revolution. So how can I harness these amazing characters that the Lazars wrote? And it was kind of, actually, the Lazars and I were talking this morning because we had a little check-in about their next piece. And we're talking about how like the revolution sequence was really our best moment of collaboration. They had written like 4 or 5 different versions where it was like very much like a script, and the characters were like talking about the thing. And it was like, how can we like throw this up against the wall, break it, and try to find something? So we did this devised generative exercise, which Whitney and I both learned from our mentor, Brian Murtis. And
Brian Murtis, pew, 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 pew.
Which is like an improvisatory exercise that teaches you how to like break the form and imagine something new. And I think I knew that I needed, in order for the audience to feel inspired by the revolution, they needed to experience it. They needed to feel like they were inside of it. And so that's really, it was like we generated a bunch of material, and then the brothers wrote this sort of masterpiece, like 18-minute song sequence. And then the use of projection and unfurling the tent to make you feel like you're inside of the thing. And I knew you needed to experience that in order to grieve what happens in Act 2.
That I don't know everyone who's watching, but like that was so emotional. That part of the piece, and Taibi's work just always has this like emotional wrenching, and I am excited for us to be working together and for everyone in Boston to see, because it's like she really ekes out every bit of juice in there. It's amazing, and then Tyler like explodes it into this like huge communal thing. So it's like, yeah. That clip was awesome. I'm literally like crying over here.
All right, I want to make sure we have plenty of time to talk about Macbeth and Stride, and also get to some questions. We already had one question come in, but it's from Patrick Lazor saying that he and Daniel will collab with Whitney on a theme song for Lunch with Lunsford. So
yeah! Oh my God!
we'll take that offline.
That's brilliant. Okay, so we'll have it for you guys by next week. Boom.
Love it. So, before we go into sort of a lot of the framing of the piece, I just wonder, and maybe Tyler, you can talk about this a little bit, sort of how you guys have all been working together in the sort of various venues developing this, because we're calling it the world premiere, right? But you guys have had some performance opportunities with Macbeth and Stride already.
Yeah, and Tyler's been a big part of that. I mean, Tyler was one of the first people to give me some money to keep working on it after graduation. I mean, I'll go briefly, and then maybe Tyler will say something about this too. But like, so at first it very much was like it felt like a cabaret. Would you say that? Like, Tyler, it felt kind of like a cabaret with the potential for much more. And it was a performer, me, exploring Lady Macbeth's complete text with music. And once I did it, I was like, there's something here. And I kept asking people for resources to keep working on it. And Chautauqua Theater, through the incredible Vivian Benesh, gave me an opportunity. And my collaborator, Zdenka Martin, who's been working with me on the piece for years, came. And then Tyler gave me another opportunity to expand it. And then at Judson Memorial a year later, I expanded it more, and I added 2 more musicians. And that it just kind of has been like bit by bit me trying to like stretch the membrane of it so that it's about something bigger, or to get to the thing that I always wanted it to be about,
Yeah, and maybe I'll just add, like, it's, we talked about how brilliant Whitney is as far as developing the piece, and it's been so striking to watch over the past couple of years her really hone in on what the story is, not just the Lady Macbeth storyline, but the kind of the storyline about women, particularly women of color, and the personal relationships that they get into, and telling that story through the prism of Macbeth. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that particular storyline has become very, like, much clearer over the past couple of years. And I think, Whitney really is like a dynamo. Like, the first time she did it in grad school, I can't express how amazing it was and what the reception was like. And I feel like it's only gotten stronger. Like, she is such a fantastic performer. So to see her not only do the Shakespearean text and then also do a lot of original music that she has created it's really like something to behold, honestly. And for Taibi and I, it's a little bit just kind of like shepherding it, a little bit here, a little bit there, making some things a little bit clearer, and then in some ways like getting out of the way and letting her do it, because it's amazing to watch, even in rehearsal and then especially in performance.
Yeah.
And through each workshop, really quick, it's funny. It's like it started kind of just me talking and singing the whole time. In 2015, this started. Ooh, Lord. Edit that out of the Zoom, y'all. 2015, this started, and through workshop by workshop, I started to include more of Macbeth's text more of my own text as a contemporary Black woman. And what I found is a kind of meta narrative that's looking at ambition, power, and heterosexual relationships, which is the key to literally every Shakespearean tragedy. And so Taibi, I think it was really Taibi who was like, do 5 of them. I really do remember a day, Taibi, it was before you were like, you should do a bunch more. And I was like, what would that even look like? But then I started looking at these tragedies, and it's like, at the end of it, the woman is always dead, either by suicide or in Othello, she's murdered. It always starts with a married couple. It's always a woman kind of trying to reach for something, and she reaches a little too hard or a little too honestly or a little too high, and then she's cut down. And so I was like, well, what's my quintessential question here? And the question is, I guess, like, is ambition fatal? Like, is ambition fatal for women? And if so, is it particularly fatal for me as a Black woman? And once I kind of landed on that question, it started each workshop over the past 5 years, got more and more focused towards that. And, you know, the conversations we've had over the years about marriage and ambition and femininity and the fatality of that, and why our stories seem to reflect that over and over again. Like, what is our obsession with female suicide? It's obviously coming from a lineage that goes all the way back to Shakespeare, because you got like Ophelia, done. Cleopatra, done. Lady M, done. Juliet, done. And it's like, what is that? Why is that? You know?
I mean, it kind of gets into, I think, a little bit how these pieces can and will position in Oberon, or sort of in, I think, A.R.T generally, but it's sort of what I was saying about What to Send Up, and I think it applies here. Like, there's so much more. I wouldn't call these plays necessarily, you know, and I wouldn't call them musicals. I think they operate in so many different ways as pieces of performance, and how that sort of pairs, in particular in the case of Macbeth and Stride, with the performance that you're conceiving inside of Oberon, where I think both those things sort of meet. You know, this idea, we started this conversation talking about the 3 of you as collaborators in the House of Providence, which I really hope that sticks. If anything comes from this conversation, I hope that's one of the lasting impressions. But the idea that, like, stepping into this piece or stepping into that venue, all bets are off, right? Yeah. People are coming at it from every direction. People are witnessing it from every direction. The traditional roles that we think of as artists in the theater really start to go away, and it becomes this hugely, hugely collaborative experience, hyper collaborative, I would say. And I think for me, that's what like pairs that space and this team so well. And so interestingly, I think that's why it's so disappointing to not be starting out this week, because we were also looking forward, but we're going to do it. We're going to start on it. We have many years ahead. For those of you who don't know, that the other pieces that Whitney is talking about in the cycle, the other 4 pieces, A.R.T has commissioned those, and we're going to be seeing all 5 of those over the course of the next, 5 to 6 years in the A.R.T world, which is really exciting.
It's exciting. I mean, I was so excited by Taylor Mack's work and the kind of culmination of that and the event that it was. And it's like my own take on, with my own issues in a completely different way, what I would call durational theater. And so they, can be programmed individually, which Mark has been doing with us. And then also at the end, we hope to do like a 5.5-hour amazing concert, after which I'll probably explode and just like ascend into heaven or something. But like this 5-hour concert that's kind of really almost like a video game, and with this woman hitting her head against the literal glass ceiling of these kind of Western narratives, that will be an exciting day. And working in the Oberon, I remember when Taibi, Tyler, and I, remember when we went to the Oberon together for the first time? And
I wasn't there. I was getting all these like video messages from you.
9-inch nails on the system, and I was like, God is real. Like, I just, space is so beautiful. It's just so perfect for that space. I couldn't imagine premiering the work anywhere else, honestly.
I want to show some pictures from some previous iterations of.
My glasses on.
this first, and I forgot to mention, Aaron Foster is actually the photographer for the pictures of Witness in Depth that we were able to check out. So this first one, this is from Judson Memorial, I think, Whitney. And the photographer is Tess Mayer. So
yeah.
This is like the very first outside of Brown performance.
Yes. Second after Chautauqua, but
got it.
you know, Chautauqua is a very specific community, and I feel like this was my first performance of it in New York. And Caitlin, a colleague of ours, also from Brown, worked on it that time, and I worked with Peter Mark Kendall, who's a tremendous actor and musician, and Jessie, and she was a drummer, and it was a 3-piece at that time, and I was just starting to put more of Macra's text in there. And we were just like, there was a day Peter and I looked at each other and we totally went up on lines. And it was just like, we realized it's about that. Like, it's about, there's some meta heterosexual dynamic going on in all these women's stories. And it's like, they're magnets and they're also weights pulling each other down into the bottom of the water. And so that was the first day I realized, I kind of looked outside of myself, just me in the audience, and looked at him and was like, oh yeah, this is a whole thing.
Yeah. Then we've got some here too. When you were, this first picture is a great picture. Maria Baranova, this is when you were Under the Radar as part of the incoming series. And I think, right, is this the first time that Taibi and Tyler come in?
Yes.
Directing the piece, right? Okay, great.
And it was also the
Such a great photo.
That's Zdenko. Shout out to Z, who's been putting up with me for a long time, forcing him to be in these shows. But that was the first time I feel I really had a world, and that's what Taibi and Tyler gave me, and that's what you guys will see. It was all of a sudden an entire space was transformed. What theater? We were in the Shiva. The Shiva, and it was like lights and costumes, and all of a sudden, again, I realized the piece could take being in a whole world of design. You know, it's larger than a cabaret.
Yeah, Taibi and Tyler, I'm curious because it's such a like high pressure moment, in particular festival performance. So thinking about like what you want to highlight, what you want to pull out in this arena, sort of where that conversation was for the two of you and with Whitney on what to establish in this moment.
I think Under the Radar, yeah, it's so insane because you have like $5 and 5 minutes to tech it. So it was really like, what's the most efficient way? And I feel like what guides Tyler and I constantly with Whitney's pieces are, how do we focus it and make it an experience of Whitney White, which she will now make a funny face about. But she really is like, she contains all the multitudes of the piece inside of herself and her performance. So it was really like visually and experientially, how can we just really give Whitney everything she needs to like fly?
And we were very lucky to have some very talented designers too working with us. Andy Jean, who did the costumes, is incredible, and Dan Stool, who did the set, is amazing, and Una, who did the lights. And we had all kind of known each other a little bit, but it was the first time maybe all of us were all working together, maybe, and but we all came together very quickly, and we all, I think, truly, I think all of us love the project and love Whitney so much that it was like, okay, we need to show up with our A game, and we only have 5 minutes and like $5, but it's going to look like $1 million. You know what I mean? So that was really nice. We were kind of blessed to have some really, really excellent designers to help us out too.
I mean, mission accomplished, because this was my first interaction with a piece. Sophie and I came to see this, and I was like, in. Like, there's so much here. And
Tyler, sorry, I interrupt you. Go ahead.
No. I mean, Whitney, you and I had already spoken, and we were kind of already like ready to go and to move forward on this. But then seeing this presentation at Under the Radar, I was like, yes, sold. We got to do it.
It takes a village, like the designers Tyler just mentioned, and my collaborators, Zdenko, and our drummer, Jeremy Smith, who also was the drummer for We Live in Cairo. Oh my God. And all the artists I've worked with over the years, theater is a business of sometimes little resource, and I've somehow been able to get these incredible performers along with me. And because of you, Mark, I finally have the opportunity to show them love in a financial way and also really sit down and do a piece. You know, we scrambled for so many years. Hey, I've got $100 here. I've got $200 here. Can you do this? Can you do this? And I'm looking forward to when I can kind of pay it forward, because it's not just me on a stage. It takes a village. It's a full band and design and Taibi and Tyler. And I'm just very grateful to both Taibi and Tyler and everyone who's kind of helped get the piece to where it is now.
I want to get into some questions because we've got about 15 minutes left, and there's some good ones. For those of you who haven't checked it out yet, in the sort of bottom of your screen, there should be an option for a Q&A.
I see it.
Type in some questions if you've got them, folks, and I'm going to get as many up in front of these amazing people as I can. So the first one is a great question. It's asking about, allegedly, Macbeth is a play that Shakespeare wrote in time of quarantine. And so what is the process? How does that inform you to think about, here we are in this time of quarantine, which obviously is very recent to the creation of this piece, but how does that resonate for you in making this and sort of the effects that it has had on our process?
Well, I think it speaks really loudly, because Macbeth, as much as I love Lady M and I identify with her struggle as a woman to be heard, to be seen, to get what she needs, she is kind of a despotic person in a time of corruption, failure, and ruin. And so the quintessential question of the piece for me right now is ambition fatal? And I think that already is such a self-centered question to be asking when, like, we're living in a world where, like, we're dealing with environmental change, we're dealing with, like, systematic corruption, but there are always people on the inside of it that can only see themselves. And so it's like, my larger question is like, or answer is like, yeah, ambition's probably fatal in a system that's not really looking at how it's pillaging everything around it to make itself work. And so I think it's interesting for a woman to identify with a character who could be considered a villain, and what does that mean in this time? Because there's never a point in the play where she really looks around and looks at the environment and looks at the kind of costs of war and says, that's too much, let's stop. She's like, I want more. And so if I, Whitney White, identify with that, I want more, am I the villain in my own story? Like, what does that mean? So I think it's interesting how Shakespeare manifests that vibe, let's call it a vibe, the vibe of plague in the way Scotland is described in the play. There was a version of this I was trying to convince Taibi and Tyler to let me, like, sing the Scottish anthem, and they were like, no, it's about Scotland. And I'm like, it's totally about Scotland. Scotland represents ruin and collapse and, like, desolation and what can happen when the wrong people are in power. And so it's interesting because from one perspective, you could look at Macbeth in Stride as this incredible feminist piece. But on the other hand, it's like, what is feminism if it's not coming up with a better system? If you just want to replace the dude in power, if you just want to be Trump, or you want to be the man at the top, sorry for the T word, the man at the top, if you just want to be that, then that's not really any different. You're just doing it as a woman. And so I think it's interesting if you go back and read the text, very much like King Lear, see how he describes the land and the battle scenes and the earth. And I feel like that plague vibe is represented in that language very much.
Yeah. This is a great one for each of you individually. Sophie Butler-Rahman writes, when did you know that you first wanted to be a director? Or when did you first know you wanted to be a director?
I was an actor. And I was studying at North Carolina School of the Arts, which has like a senior year high school program. And my acting teacher pulled me aside one day after class and was like, I think you're a director. And I was like, fuck you. And then he was like, just come see my rehearsal. He was rehearsing the college students in something. And they were doing Master Harold and the Boys by Athol Fugard, and they were doing the spit scene. And I just sat down and looked at him and looked at the actors, and I was like, oh, that's it. That's me. So it's over 20 years ago now, which is kind of crazy. And doing it more majority of my life.
Yeah, I think for me, I also started as an actor, like in high school and college, and then started doing some directing stuff in high school. Shout out to Middleborough High School in Massachusetts, and Eleanor Osborne, my English drama teacher. And then I went to Holy Cross in Worcester for undergrad, and that's when I got to take like my first like actual real directing class, and it just like opened so many things up for me. I was like, oh, that's the thing that I actually love to do, you know. So yeah, I guess that's when.
Tyler's directed so many amazing plays. I'll never forget the Midsummer that Tyler did at Trinity Rep, and I sat on stage. It was an immersive, beautiful piece. It was like a mashup between Shakespeare and who's the guy who did the Royal Tenenbaums and Rushmore and all those movies?
Yeah, Wes Anderson.
It was like a Wes Anderson-y Midsummer. I'll never forget it. I wept like a child. For me, directing was late. I still was like, I'm an actor when I went to Trinity, and then Brian Murtis was like, wow. And in my first year, Brian gave me the opportunity to start thinking about directing something. And it was the first time I'd ever directed anything in my life, this studio project that he helped me do. I am forever indebted to him and his wife, Melissa Keedman, because I knew that I wasn't quite, my itch wasn't completely scratched, but I had no idea. And I was a singer and musical theater actress, and being an African-American, say if you can sing and dance, people just tell you to keep singing and dancing. They don't really push you to do anything else. And all of our teachers at Brown were like, see what else you can do. And then that was the moment. So it was late. It was like 2014.
Isn't that, I find that to be like the most exciting though, like the projects that we've worked on here where some of the key artists are not theater people, you know, who have never done theater before, don't know what theater is, but they're just like amazing musicians or amazing choreographers, and just sort of have lived outside of whatever the American theater is, that sort of come in to play. It's like so incredibly rewarding because it just like breaks you open, right? You don't stick to all the rules. You don't stick, because as folks are asking questions in an effort to sort of learn the rules of how theater is made in America, you're like, why do we do that? Yeah. That's actually a great question, you know?
Whitney did a production of Hedda Gabler. I think her
that was my first play I ever directed.
So and it was like everyone. I think I maybe went with Brian Murtis. I can't remember, but I remember talking with him after, and we were like, "Is Whitney like a genius?" Like we were like, "Oh my god, that was incredible!" So I remember that very, very vividly. That Hedda Gabler production.
Aww.
We have a question from our friend Alicia Harris. Right? It's so exciting. Alicia says, what's a work that you've experienced that serves as an enduring reminder of how extraordinary a piece can be?
I mean, Is God Is by you. Like, I mean, when I saw Is God Is by Alicia, you guys have to read her plays on the page, because What to Send Up and Is God Is on the page are so they transform your mind, and your mind starts making its own landscape. And then when you see a director so talented like Taibi put that up with no apologies at all, with brilliant design and transformation, you're like, oh, I'm happy I'm alive today. Like, I'm so happy I woke up today, was the feeling I had when I saw Is God Is. And it reminded me, don't ever blink at what you really want to say. Don't flinch, like, push further. And it also reminded me, like, just don't apologize. Like, if that's the story you have, like, just put it up as boldly and honestly as you can, and also design the fuck out of it. Sorry for swearing, because it was just the world that Taibi made was beautiful. That's one. And then one other one, actually, Brian Murtis's Glass Menagerie.
Yeah, agreed.
Yo! Yo. So Brian Murtis and our like master acting teacher, Brian McLean, teamed up, and Annie Scria and Brian's music collaborator. They did this glass menagerie that I do think it's one of the best things I've ever seen in my life. I'll shut up now. Other people have to talk. But that reminded me of the director's authority to have authorship on a story. He got in there and he was like, I'm also an author of this story, and showed us a completely new way to look at it. And it's the best glass menagerie I've ever seen.
Yeah, agreed.
It's funny though, all the things you were saying about Is I was thinking about what to send up, which maybe it's just like obvious to make this like an Alicia Harris party, but Alicia, I haven't asked the question, but that moment for me was, two people that I love immensely, just absolutely hitting a home run together and the micro moment to moment level and the macro level. And I always go to the theater most satisfied when I feel like there's a true reason we all had to witness this in a room together. And it felt like it couldn't be a film, it couldn't be an Instagram Live, it couldn't be anything. Like, I had a profound experience with those people whose names I don't know, but I think it was like a Thursday night. That was really healing and transformative, and that it lives inside of my body, and I take it with me everywhere I go.
Yeah, I mean, as someone that has been able to see both What to Send Up and Is God Is, I will like co-sign on that. Both of them are productions that both the visuals and the language kind of live with me still, and that's not just because Alicia asked the question. That is like a real thing. But I guess maybe going a playwright, I guess, that I've been thinking a lot about recently is Thornton Wilder, just because the way that he deals with time, both in Our Town as well as Skin of Our Teeth, and particularly Skin of Our Teeth, which deals with like the end of the world. Like each is 3 acts, and each act kind of ends with human civilization being faced with a existential threat, and then kind of overcoming it by the skin of their teeth, and then moving on to the next thing. And since we're living through this like crazy time, I've just kind of been thinking about that play a lot, and how he's thought of as very kind of stodgy and traditional, but actually he's like wildly experimental and really like interesting and weird and brilliant. So those are both Our Town and Skin of Our Teeth. I've kind of just been like thinking about them recently, just because of what we've been going through, but just what a genius he is.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up those plays by Thornton Wilder and Whitney that you brought up, Glass Menagerie, because I feel like all of those 3 plays in particular often get like relegated to this other place in our mind as like old, or just like something we don't care about anymore, or I don't know. I think people have assumptions about what those plays are, and like actually bring them forward and dig in. You're like, oh my god,
Yeah.
these are prophetic in so many ways. All right, I think we have time for one more. Whitney, this is for you, so you're going to take us home. From Dominique Ryder. Hi, Whitney. Curious about your interest in Shakespeare. I know how much you love Chekhov, and the ways in which you found yourself situated inside of his texts as a Black woman. Do you feel like you found new things about yourself and his text now that you're fully leaning into as Whitney and figuring out how to meet the women that he's written?
Yes. Dominique, I love you. Dominique is a brilliant, brilliant, brilliant theater artist. Get ready. We're all going to be bugging them for jobs. But I think where I situate myself within Shakespeare's world as a Black woman is pretty much, I hope this doesn't discourage people from hiring me to do the comedies, but where I experience my Blackness most reflected in the world is in the tragedies. Because except for Othello is like a different kind of beast. But in the tragedies, I feel I see Shakespeare show the underbelly of the world. And it is often in the tragedies where the best humor is. I think Richard III is wildly hilarious. But in these tragedies, he has these characters which give zero cares, and they go for what they want in such a ruthless way. And you also see these people with their backs against the wall deciding to either destroy the world or save the world. And I think that being a Black woman, very often my back feels against the wall, and I've got to make a decision about what I'm going to do. Am I going to let the world pummel me, or am I going to get on top of it? And so it's within the tragedies that I often see the most potential for diverse stories in an honest way. You know, having a person of color in Romeo and Juliet is not a joke. It's not diverse casting. It's because in those tragedies, I feel they deal with the biggest obstacles. And that is the definition of being a person of color in America today. So I feel like that's why I'm always trying to pitch these stories, because it's like, those are the stories I know, the tragedies. Like, I know the story of the woman who's trying to get the crown and then fails and dies like too early. Like, so that's where I kind of see, that's where I see myself now. I hope I can mature and start to see more of the comedies, my story in those comedies, but I don't so much right now.
Mm. Well, look, this is incredible.
That was such a dark note to end on, Jesus. Macbeth in Stride is hilarious. Like, my wigs are amazing. The costumes are amazing. It's not all doom and gloom.
No, not at all. And the music's insane. I mean, we did do a little workshop in February, right? That we filmed that I was not going to show today. But I remember sitting in there and just like hearing y'all rock out to some of this music, thinking like, this is electric. Like, people are going to leave with total electricity in their bodies after these performances, which will happen. Even though they're not happening this week, they will happen. And Whitney's already so far ahead in writing so many of the other four.
Yeah, but they're really rough. We need to just shh.
Yeah.
Really good. Whitney is using this pandemic to keep writing. She sent us a song from one of them, and Tyler played it, and I was like, wait, is that like who is that? That's some famous album I need to get. And it was Whitney White, just like sending us new shit.
I was like, Tabes, doesn't this sound good? And Tabes was like, yeah. Who is it? I was like, it's Whitney. I was like, that's the Whitney song. You know, it sounds great. Yeah, it's great.
Thank you.
I also just want to thank everyone for tuning in for Lunch with Lunsford. All of our supporters, our audiences, our friends. I know for me, having this hour once a week to sort of get to chat with my buddies is a needed distraction in a very trying time. So I hope that it does the same for all of you. Thank you so much, Taibi and Tyler and Whitney, for taking this time today.
Thank you, A.R.T.
Thank you, Mark. What a good host.
I know, this was great. This was wonderful.
If theater dies, you're definitely doing a talk show.
Can someone get, this news to Ellen? Like maybe I can take it over for her.
We can work on that.
Whitney could probably make it happen.
Yeah. Someone's at CAA, right? You'll figure it out. Okay. Thank you all so much.
Bye.
Bye. Be well, everyone.
Yeah. Be well.